I think he's going to have a pretty considerable footprint on this draft class because, Ryan Poles is in charge of personnel, roster decisions, coming through the front office. More times than not, that's where it needs to be, especially when you do have a first-year head coach.
Great article earlier this week about Ben Johnson, about Ryan Poles. You did report that there's going to be some sort of an extension. The Bears like to keep this, very buttoned up. Do most teams in the league, do it that way? Do they not ever reveal what kind of contracts their front office people are operating under?
No, Minnesota did it the other week when they extended Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, right around the same time that they did Kevin O'Connell's extension. I think some teams just choose not to do it. The Bears don't ever really publicly reveal that. And honestly, I haven't covered a coach here who's gotten an extension up until this point. So I don't know how it's going to work, when that expectation that Ryan Poles gets extended to, add more years to his deal. But we know that he's got 2 years left right now. And I don't know if they're in a super big rush to do it. There's been a lot going on with the coaching search. There's, the offseason and everything that they're doing. The Bears some members from the Bears front office will be down here at the Super Bowl. It's a busy time. So, the lull is the next couple weeks before the combine. Does it happen then? Does it happen later in the offseason? I think it's hard to say right now. But, when Ben Johnson took this job and his agent, Rick Smith, I know he talked to Peggy about it on her show, talked about GM alignment. And I think that's, this is kind of the inevitable conclusion, something coming out of that Ryan Poles and his head coach will be on the same timeline going forward because of how important that is for stability. And this team desperately is looking for stability and trying to build their own stability and maintain that with a general manager and head coach who are on the same page, believe the same things, have the same goals, and, get the same amount of time to do it together.
Did Ben Johnson ever have to be sold on Ryan Poles? I know you reported that he didn't demand any sort of deal be made with someone of his choice, but what do you think made him so convinced that he can work in this relationship with Ryan Poles?
I think it's interesting if you go back and listen to his agent and what he was talking about right after the Bears job became open and what the false narrative was out there, at least one that he's I'm good with this because it's making it seem like we have leverage on certain things. And he wasn't asking for his own general manager apparently, but there was this perception that was out there that Ben Johnson wants to go to a place where he will have control over who's in the front office. Now he would have, who knows if Shad Khan changed his mind and said, you can pick your own GM, and Trevor Lawrence is here. If that happens earlier in the process, does that sway anything? Maybe, maybe not. But we know that on Monday morning, that's when he came to his conclusion after he did the 4 virtual interviews the week before, 48 hours after the loss, that he was ready to move on from Detroit, and he chose the Bears. So, and everything I've been told as far as negotiations on the contract, it was a really seamless process. There was no nothing outlandish was asked for. The Bears actually, about 10 days before they hired Ben, they got together with their legal team, general counsel in the building, and they structured the language for the head coach contract, not knowing it was going to be for sure Ben Johnson. He was their top choice. But they put together all of the language in this contract well ahead of the time that they presented it to Ben and his agent to just go through it. And I think it's smart. I think it shows you a different part of the process that you don't typically get to see and to learn about. And it may sound like something simple, but it just shows they had their ducks in a row from the very beginning of this thing. And that's a good process if you can pull it off that way.
What type of input will Ben Johnson have during the draft?
I think he's going to have a pretty considerable footprint on this draft class because, Ryan Poles is in charge of personnel, roster decisions, coming through the front office. More times than not, that's where it needs to be, especially when you do have a first-year head coach. But the way that Ben talked about some specifics during his introductory press conference with the offensive line, knowing that they need to play better, knowing that they're going to have to go out and get guys because there's going to be some pretty significant rebuild up front, but also knowing that the pass rush isn't there. I think for him, it's entrusting that the general manager has the right pulse on how the roster is already constructed and the things that this roster needs to continue to get better. but like not being married and set in his ways, meaning Ryan Poles, to these players are untouchable. Everything else like is up for discussion. Like I think everything's got to be up for discussion, which, for a first-time head coach, for a general manager who's been here, this is the byproduct of his last 3 years. There's probably going to have to be some discussions on, maybe some harder decisions about who stays and who goes and how that works within the Bears' plan for free agency, for the draft, and, who they need here that might not already be here. But I do think Ben will have, pretty considerable say in it, considering it's his roster. Rather, it's his coaching that's going to take this roster, hopefully, to where it wants to go. And he's got to know he has the right players in it. So if he wants speed at receiver, then identifying who that player is in the draft is not just a front office thing. That's on the coaching staff too. Teams now, the Bears have started their draft meetings. So this is when they start stacking the board to put the needs and, kind of their needs in order, but also their, who they like in order too, which is going to be a collaborative. I know we don't like to use that word, but it's got to be a collaborative process.
Yeah. Courtney Cronin's our guest live in New Orleans, doing work for ESPN down at Super Bowl 59. It's Carmen and Jurko on ESPN 1000 and the ESPN Chicago app. Dennis Allen's got like 20-plus years coaching experience in the NFL. Eric Bieniemy's got 15 years or so of coaching experience in the NFL alone. Dan Rauscher's got like 30 years of coaching experience, both college and pro. Was that something they definitely set out and sort of embarked upon to make sure that they brought in a lot of veteran coaches to surround Ben Johnson with?
Yeah, and I think that's why he was able to fill his coaching staff so quickly, because he was able to identify what he needed and what he wanted right away to get out in front of it. I mean, Dennis Allen it's good for Ben Johnson because he knows that when he leaves defensive meetings, if he's stopping into the head coach, he can trust that when he closes the door, the coaching's going to be there. He doesn't have to meddle in it. He doesn't have to worry about something that, let him go worry about coaching the offense. He's got a ton on his plate right now. And having somebody with experience and in the position rooms too, I think it's good. He's got coaches who have coached with him who are going to be able to teach other coaches how they want things coached. That's to me is of critical importance because of the Detroit connections that he has, and in knowing how how he wants stuff done, because that's what OTAs are for. Like for the coaches as much as it is the players, like how we're going to be teaching you these things so you don't get to training camp and you're still like back at square one. Like that should give you a nice launch point for when you get back in August and late July. The coaching, like the coaches know how to coach it so they can start seeing results from the players. And for Ben, forming a coaching staff that has a lot of experience at some critical positions, offensive line, not so good last year. Running game last year, not so good. He's got veteran coaches at both of those positions specifically that are going to help, in his eyes, build what he's, create some form of what he had in the run game in Detroit, to then obviously that all of that helps the quarterback.
Yeah. What are Rome and DJ down there promoting?
They're doing Bounty, so the quicker, what is it? The
picker upper?
Quicker pipper.
Yeah, the quicker picker upper.
Quicker picker upper.
Yeah, it's for their wingman promotion. So they're giving out free wings in the media center right now. And it's like they've been going through the car wash. They're doing different interviews that they're like contractually obligated for. And so I had a chance to just kind of walk and talk with them for a few minutes on the way, like as they kind of go from like station to station. And, I haven't seen any other Bears players down here. I saw Kyle Long, but like no current Bears players here. And it's a good opportunity for guys to get out, to do marketing, to get in front of, the cameras, even though sometimes they don't want to do it during the year. When you're paid for it, it's a little nicer. But yeah, they've got a pretty full day of interviews and kind of just like going back in the media room, or rather the Radio Row area, visiting a couple of different places. All
right. Excellent. Anything else we should know?
No, I mean, it's going to be like a long day, a long couple of days till Sunday.
Yeah,
that's the part of Super Bowl week where it drags. But now that practice is happening, I think the Eagles go out. They should be out in the practice field within the next hour. They're practicing with the Saints facility, and then the Chiefs are practicing at Tulane. So now that it's real, like there's practice coming up, like the game is around the corner, and I think we all are ready to see can the Eagles do what seems like it's the impossible right now.
Yeah, I know. Who are you picking?
I'm picking the Eagles. I've picked them twice already, so I don't think I can change up on that. And I'm picking them 31-27.
That's an over. I like it. Okay. Courtney, excellent. Thank you. We appreciate the update.
Thanks, guys.
All right,
Take
be
care.
safe. See ya. There's Courtney Cronin at Courtney R. Cronin.